How's it going, everybody, and welcome into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we're going to be talking some must-own wide receivers from the top of the board, moving all the way down through things here as we wind up draft season and get ready for the start of the regular season here. If you've already done your drafts or you're not looking to find more avenues to attack that draft board, these are simply just names that maybe you want to keep your eye out for on the trade market or whatever that might be, to just try and assemble the strongest roster possible heading into the season so that it makes your life a little bit easier on the back end. But nonetheless, yesterday's video, I'm recording them on the same date, but yesterday's video I posted my must-own running backs, so go check that out if you haven't done so already. We went right through the board there as well, covered I think there's 18 names that I really like from start to finish and broke those situations down. So let me know if you've got any questions as we get through things here, but let's hit that intro and get straight in to today's episode. As always, if you're new to the SFS community, I'd love to have you drop down and click that subscribe button as we get started with today's video so I can be a tool and a resource for you however you need be this fantasy season to ultimately reach those goals and win those championships at the year's end. But here we go. Let's get started today. Calvin Ridley is my first must-own wide receiver off the board. When prepping today's video, I had to make the choice. Where did I want to start with these must-own players? And I think Ridley is the best spot to do so because although I love Devonta Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, all those players that have such great upside for us, Calvin Ridley has just as good upside but a better draft price. And that's what makes him must draft for me at this spot, is the fact that I can get a player who I believe in as a top fantasy threat at the wide receiver position, and I can get him in the late second round. Whereas Devonta Adams, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, depending on the climate of your league, depending on the preferences of the players in your league mates, you might have to pick them in the first round, the early second. The draft value here is what makes this such a great pick because the production I'm getting isn't all that different. I think that there's a very small drop-off from each of those players moving down the board, however you've got your rankings assorted. Calvin Ridley is my wide receiver for this season, but you can get him in ADP as wide receiver 6 or 7. So it's an excellent value to be had here. No reason to pass on him. Now, if there's an extreme situation where there is a very good running back candidate on the board here, I would take the running back over Ridley, but I find it much less likely that in the territory that I'm drafting Calvin Ridley, I get those opportunities to also be picking a very solid running back. So Ridley's the start of this tier for me. This is where things get rolling at the wide receiver position. And from there, we jump right into the third round. And obviously, again, if you're post-draft and just looking for ways to attack your fantasy rosters, the ADP doesn't really matter all that much to you. But Keenan Allen is kind of he is the start of the tier of third-round wide receivers. His ADP is just at the top of the third round in 12-team leagues. And this is my bread and butter here. My draft strategy all offseason. Start attacking wide receiver in the third round if you can get those two running backs you like in rounds 1 and 2. Keenan's got the safe floor. He can be the wide receiver 1 for your team. He's not a flashy pick. Maybe it's not something you walk away from draft day thinking I just won my league with that pick, but he's certainly a player that fills his role and you don't have to worry about any given week. He's a sit and forget type player. I believe that with the target share he's seen the past few seasons in Los Angeles, when he's been healthy, it's really hard to find a better option. I frequently found myself last year, just with the matchups he had, putting him as a top 5 weekly lineup play at his position just because of the volume he gets, the upside his quarterback was showing the potential to feed him, and all those other things taken into consideration. I mean, he was having some very favorable matchups last year in division. I mean, there literally isn't a bad situation. Now the Broncos secondary gets a whole lot tougher. The Raiders still aren't all that formidable. I mean, this is just going into extra detail here. But at the end of the day, Keenan Allen's a player you should feel very, very comfortable with as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. And when you can get that in the third round, that is very advantageous for your teams. You can't get a running back 1 in the third round. It just doesn't happen. The chances of that player actually hitting are far less, whereas Keenan Allen might be one of the safer picks in leagues this year. Allen Robinson is the same deal. A little bit later on the draft board than Keenan Allen, but still in that third round of 12-team leagues. Sit and forget, baby. PPR machine. He's seen 150-plus targets the last 2 seasons. He is the guy in Chicago. And if Justin Fields can take this offense to the next level, I don't see why you need to be picking those elite wide receivers if the running backs, or even if you want to take a Darren Waller or Travis Kelce in the late first or early second round, I don't see why you shouldn't do that and wait for these wide receivers later. The value, the depth here at this position is so elite, and you'll see that as we get into names 8 through 10 even. I'm looking at my list here. There are so many players that I think have tremendous, tremendous upside and can give us really great returns from where we ended up picking them. And it just illustrates why we should be emphasizing other positions over this one, because once you get into these names here, the depth is so, so good. So Allen Robinson, I love his floor week in and week out. There's a potential, though, that he could be even better than we're expecting him to be if Justin Fields can come in and prove he's the real deal and increase the ceiling at quarterback, which will obviously make a big difference on his pass catchers. Terry McLaurin, this is a huge breakout pick for me this year. Now, Terry has already had very impressive seasons in his young NFL career. He's shown us he looks like a vet in the way he plays the game. He can get the job done. There's no doubt about that. But Terry can take things to the next level here. I think that his floor is lesser, significantly lesser than that of Allen Robinson or a Keenan Allen, but his ceiling might be a lot better. They also have very, very good ceilings, but he's got a gunslinger now. Ryan Fitzpatrick will be slinging the ball all over the field. And with what Terry can do stretching the field, with what he can do as an all-around route runner, there is a lot to like about this situation. He's going later than these other players as well. You can get him as a late third-round pick. The upside is very, very elite here. He doesn't seem like the safest investment on your team as a wide receiver one, potentially. And not all these players are going to be wide receiver ones this year, but we're still in the territory of the draft board where you can look at these players and make a legitimate argument, or case as to why they should be or could be this level of a player. Terry McLaurin fits that mold, and for me, I could absolutely and currently do have him slated to be a top 12 fantasy wide receiver this season. Ceedee Lamb is kind of the end of that tier now. So after Ceedee, we're moving into either elite wide receiver 2s or some fringe wide receiver 1s that could either swing one way or another. Ceedee Lamb for me is my wide receiver 12 this year. I have him bumped up over Amari Cooper. If you're going to draft a Dallas receiver, it should be Ceedee Lamb in my opinion. He's got the ability to run the whole route tree. He's got that superstar factor that you just look at Ceedee Lamb and he has that it factor. If you understand what I'm talking about, just the eye test. When you watch Ceedee play, he proves it. He makes big plays. He's got some swagger. Not that that does anything for us in fantasy football, but it just makes me feel that he is a confident player and is ready to go out there and make the big plays in the game. He has earned Dak Prescott's trust. I haven't heard a single bad thing, or really what's more important here is I haven't heard anything come out of Dak's mouth about Ceedee Lamb that hasn't spoken the world of him and hasn't shown us that he has all the confidence in the world in him. I think Ceedee will probably be the most targeted Dallas Cowboy wide receiver this year. I expect him to outdo Amari Cooper in that territory. I think he'll have more touchdowns than Amari Cooper does this season. And maybe Amari Cooper, with his efficiency, because he's more of a deep threat, can find a way to beat Ceedee in the yardage department. But with those other things being considered here, I think that Ceedee will have every opportunity to outproduce him and to be a dominant player for us in fantasy. I think he's got a big year 2 breakout in store this year. And this is a pick you absolutely want to be all over in the early 4th round where he's currently going. Right after him is Robert Woods. This is another player I have as a fringe wide receiver 1 here. So we're moving a little bit into the wide receiver 2 rankings for 12-team leagues right now. But Robert Woods is the floor specialist here. He is not a flashy pick at all in fantasy, but he's got volume. He has got the ability to produce, and he's got the skill set to just be a do-it-all type player. Sean McVay loves using him in the wide receiver run game. He's a very good screen pass catcher in the terms that he can catch a ball at the line of scrimmage and use blockers and have the vision and awareness to make positive plays out of those that start at 0. So he can take it from 0 to 12, 0 to 20. You understand what I'm saying here? He has run after catch ability. That's very nice here. It makes him a bit more of a standard play. He does have that volume, so he can be a decent pick in PPR as well, and he's actually still very good in that format. But regardless of what format you're playing in, his ceiling doesn't really get more valuable based off of which format you're playing in. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here. Robert, like I said, is a floor play, not a flashy pick, not a league-winning pick. But if you're going to go running back early, if you're going to maybe dabble in that tight end market in the first 3 rounds, and you're just looking for a solid player who can hold down the fort in your starting lineup at the wide receiver position, Robert Woods is that guy. Now, I like to pair him with another player or a few players on your bench. Maybe it's the other wide receiver in your starting lineup that has some more upside to offset the fact that he's not going to go out there and have too many crazy high-scoring games. But he's not a player you have to worry about every week, and you can feel confident starting him in relatively any matchup because the way he's used doesn't often result in him being clamped up because, like I said, he's catching passes at the line of scrimmage and getting run after catch. He's being used in the wide receiver run game, so it's not always a matter of the corner across from him is the better player. He's not going to get you any points because he can find other ways to produce and be a very, very, very consistent player in lineups this season. Now, Tyler Lockett is a little bit more of a different situation here. A lot of players are scared off of him this season because he's got the boom-bust tag thrown around on him a lot. And an injury that was hampering him a bit last season kind of got his name dragged through the mud here. But I am all in on Tyler Lockett this season. I think his upside is fantastic. This is the perfect example and contrasting player to Robert Woods that I was talking about I would like to see him paired with. Lockett's ceiling it goes to the moon and back. I mean, he is a player. You saw his games last year against the Cardinals and just some of the wow performances he had. Him and Russell Wilson have such a good chemistry together that they just make fireworks happen, and these two are magic. So if you want a upside pick, Tyler Lockett is your guy this year. As long as he's healthy, I think he puts up top 12 fantasy receiver numbers. I don't have him ranked as a top 12 wideout. Again, he's a high upside wide receiver 2 for me. But that comes down to consistency and dependability. I know that he will reach those high numbers in stretches this year. The only question mark is how often will he be doing that for us and how frequently will he spit back bust performances on a given week. That's what keeps him a little bit lower, but still in the late 5th round, no reason not to pull the trigger on a receiver who has that good of upside and can do that much for your lineups. Brandin Aiyuk for the 49ers. This is a player who I think could be a big-time breakout. We started to see flashes from him down the stretch last year, was a very impressive rookie. He's kind of like a Robert Woods in the fact that he's just a do-it-all player. He can produce from anywhere on the field. And I think that if we start to see, I'm not sure when we'll see Trey Lance this season. Maybe we don't see him at all if Jimmy G is that good, or at least can just hold down that job for the whole year. But there's a chance that if you get a big arm quarterback like Trey Lance in this offense and start getting that passing game rolling, that run game is always dominant. The play action game is lethal. If you can get that set up with Aiyuk and Trey Lance, that is going to be one heck of a wide receiver and quarterback combination. He can still get the job done with Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, Brandin Aiyuk's breakout games, or at least the foreshadowing to that potentially this year, were happening with very, very below average quarterbacks in the 49ers' second and third string players when Jimmy G was banged up last season. So he's shown us he's pretty immune to quarterback play. He's actually been talked about as the favorite of literally, it doesn't matter what quarterback is in at camp. Aiyuk is the favorite target for all of them, over a George Kittle, over a Deebo Samuel. There's a lot of upside here, and I think the floor might even be better than that of a Tyler Lockett. I expect him to be the number 1 passing asset on his team at the wide receiver position at least. Now, you've got George Kittle there, but at least in terms of Tyler Lockett, we all kind of assume DK Metcalf will be the more utilized and more force-fed player in that offense. To me, that's Aiyuk at the wide receiver position. I think he has a clear advantage right now over Deebo Samuel, and that should continue to be the trend for this season. Devonta Smith here, the first rookie up in today's list. Now, what makes Devonta Smith a must-own player for me is that I see a lot of volume here because I think he has a clear path to being the team's top passing option. Devonta Smith is, yes, undersized. He might be a little bit scrawny, but he runs the whole route tree, and he has the skill set, the poise, the technique to get open and create space. He's going to have the ball thrown his way a lot. The Eagles will not be a good team this year. I expect them to finish either 3rd or 4th in the NFC least, and they should, in turn, be throwing the ball a lot. Jalen Hurts has some nice pieces around him. I love Miles Sanders' raw talent at the running back position, but he just gets hurt a lot. That doesn't really have much to do with the passing game, though, because he's not utilized too much there. Dallas Goedert is a nice piece as well. but he's not going to make significant inroads to be better than Devonta Smith. Jalen Reagor, the first-round pick from 2020, is nice. He's playing in the slot, but he's not a high-volume play. The targets are going to be going to Devonta Smith. He has, like I said, a clear shot to be, as long as he can stay healthy and overcome all the question marks we've had about him coming into the league, he should be an X wide receiver for this Eagles team. And in turn, that high volume will turn into production. And if he can separate at the level we expect him to, he should be a very, very good player. You're looking at a mix of somewhere. I see a lot of traits from Davante Adams in his game. I see a lot of DeAndre Hopkins. Now, he's not any one or another of these players, but I see a lot of the tools and the routes, the way he goes about things. I've seen some Stephon Diggs and the way he runs his comebacks and his hitch routes. I see some Justin Jefferson and how he just kind of glides around the field with his routes. There's a lot to like here, and I think that after seeing Jamar Chase's struggles in the preseason, albeit preseason, drops have been an issue for him. I still think Jamar Chase will be a great pick. But right now, Devonta Smith is trending up right now as potentially the best receiver in this class. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of surprise picks. Elijah Moore, I think, is coming in for a big year, and you'll see him later on in today's list of this episode. But I got all things great to say about Devonta. If he's healthy and out there, you don't want to miss out on him on draft day here. Courtland Sutton, something that was very impressive and very encouraging for me to see was his route running. And I wasn't watching him catch passes. I wasn't paying attention to his stat sheet. I was watching Courtland Sutton and how he ran routes. His cutting, it was very encouraging to see. The way that he was able to smoothly break in and out of routes, catch the football, look confident when he was playing after that gruesome knee injury. I'm really starting to get back on the wagon here and become less and less concerned. I think both him and Jerry Jeudy will be very valuable fantasy assets this season. But it took away a lot of the concern I had just watching him. Now, he is playing with a knee brace. We'll see if that'll bother him. I don't expect it'll have much of an impact on the situation, but he's typically been known for his red zone production and ability to score touchdowns in the past. He'll still be able to do that. He still has the frame. He still has the youth, the athleticism. He's still technically in his athletic prime, despite the fact that he's recovering from a significant injury. I think that just watching him and getting those question marks I had out of the way now make me feel like, you know what, coming into an offense with less mistakes at the quarterback position, hopefully Teddy can be a little bit more reliable there. It should be a good role for him. Teddy B might just be the best starting quarterback Courtland Sutton has had in his young NFL career. And for a player who, the way we thought of Courtland Sutton prior to the injury, the way we would be drafting him had he not had that injury, shows us that he is now a great value pick at his current draft price. So it would be foolish of us to pass on him now, seeing what he can still do and should be able to do this season. I think it becomes a lot better of a situation for us this year. Robby Anderson. Now, the first thing I want to say here is I was drafting a standard league the other night, and I realized how limited his ceiling is in standard leagues because Robby is not a touchdown scoring player. But in PPR leagues, I love me some Robby Anderson this year. He's going to be fed the ball. He was the leading wide receiver in the target department for the Panthers offense last season, and now he gets his former quarterback from back in New York under center this year. I think he'll, again, lead the team in targets. Robby, going back to not liking him as much in standard, is the fact that he only had 3 touchdowns last year. He's not a red zone target. He scores on deep passing plays and getting a ton of run after catch. That's great. And when he hauls in the football and gets a caught pass, that's a free point for us in PPR. But when he's not doing that in standard leagues and not scoring 7, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns, it can be a little bit of an issue. Nonetheless, this is a team's potentially leading player in the target share department that you can get at a very good draft price, relatively the 8th round or so of fantasy, 12-team fantasy leagues. A lot of value to be had here. Could very easily be a starting player in fantasy lineups this season if he's able to produce the way I think he can with Sam Darnold at the quarterback position. Now, Brandin Cooks, I've talked big about him all offseason. I'm still loving this pick here. We're not valuing him because his quarterback play doesn't look very advantageous, but the reps, and as long as he's healthy, the opportunity and volume will be there. Tyrod Taylor is not Deshaun Watson. He does not give Brandin Cooks the elite upside that I think he would had Watson been the quarterback under center. Now, Watson's healthy, he's available, he's ready to play, but I just don't expect him to decide to play for this Texans team until he's moved to another team or acquitted of his allegations. I don't know the terminology for all that, but basically if he's guilty of what all the allegations against him are saying, then we're not going to see him either. But the point being here, I don't think the Texans quarterback will be number 4 this season. That's the point we're getting at. It should be Tyrod Taylor, but the Texans are still going to be a putrid football team, trailing late in games, throwing the ball. Cooks doesn't really have significant competition for targets. Anthony Miller can't stay healthy to save his life. Kiki QT has not been reliable at this point. I've liked the flashes I've seen out of him. I really like him as a player and wish he could do more things, but he seemed to kind of hit a brick wall at a given point. And then Nico Collins comes in here as this potential raw rookie pick that could be very, very good for them this year and a red zone producer. But Cooks is far and away the most proven talent, the guy with the best track record, and the best ability to be a quality fantasy producer. Again, probably not too much of a standard league play here, looking more at PPR leagues where you can just get him fed the ball and get points that way because he's not going to score 10, 12 touchdowns this year, but 7 or 8 might be nice. I think he might have between 1,100 and 1,300 yards receiving, just because of the fact that they're going to be passing the ball at such a high rate. He's going to have a lot of opportunity to catch passes, and being explosive and fast, he will make big plays come from those. Darnell Mooney here moving down the board, a couple names left. This is another Bears receiver, but man, he showed some excellent flashes as a field stretching threat last season, and he looks like an absolute steal out of the draft in the 5th round from Tulane. Justin Fields has been one of the most intriguing things about Justin Fields, one of the things that he has been best respected for coming out of the draft, is his accuracy and touch on deep passes. He was one of the most accurate downfield passers in the NCAA last season, and that was probably the biggest weakness for the Bears' vertical passing offense last year, was that they didn't have anyone on the roster who could accurately put a ball in the receiver's breadbasket when they get open. Mooney was frying some of the best corners in the league last year, and then Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky were just delivering airmail to the sideline way over his head. And although he had 98 targets as a player who only started 6 games, he wasn't really getting quality opportunities because the passes thrown his way were so bad. I think even Andy Dalton's a step in the right direction here, but once you get Justin Fields under center, things should take off. This Bears offense should be taking the top off defenses, and the overall ceiling is going to go up at nearly every position here. Montgomery is a player I think benefits from this. They'll have more chances to punch the ball in from easy 1 or 2 yard scores. Robinson should finally be able to catch downfield balls, and Darnell Mooney in turn as well. So I love the situation. He showed me a lot as a player last year in terms of his talent. The actual situation with players surrounding him, I also think has taken a step in the right direction, which is why he's trending up on my board this year. Elijah Moore, the potential as a rookie player who has a lot of talent, can stretch the field, run the whole route tree. He could be the number 1 for this offense. I think that it's between him or Corey Davis right now. I think Jamison Crowder, who's been the guy the last 2 years, is kind of on his way out the door. They reflected that with his contract situation and just how they value him as a player on that roster. But Moore can come out here and with a playmaker like Zach Wilson put up monster numbers. There's no reason his ceiling can't be amongst the best of this rookie wide receiver class. And I think that in an offense where there's probably going to be a high volume of passes thrown, you've got yourself the chance to put up some pretty great numbers for us this season. So I'm a big fan of that pick up there. And then Jakobi Meyers here. This is another very unflashy pick, but a player who can just be a quality 1st or 2nd flex option for teams. Meyers gets open, and maybe he's not the best guy after the catch. Maybe he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns. Maybe he doesn't have the highest yardage output. But he is the most targeted Patriots pass catcher last season and expected to be this year. Cam Newton has clearly dialed into Jakobi Meyers in this preseason and last season as the starter for the team. And we don't have an official decision from Bill Belichick, who's going to be that starting quarterback now by the time I post this video. That could very well be made up in his mind. I expect it'll be Cam either way. But regardless, that official decision will likely be out by the time this video comes, because that'll be about 12 hours at minimum after I recorded this. But nonetheless, Jakobi Meyers is probably the most reliable receiver on this Pats roster right now. I love Aguilar's upside in terms of field stretching ability. But with Cam under center, I don't know if that plays too well in his game because he's not exactly the most accurate passer. I think Mac Jones might bring out the best of Aguilar. Nonetheless, Meyers will just sit down in coverage, get open, find the space, the hole in the zone defense, and slowly rack up fantasy points. This is not going to win your leagues every week, but if you just need a quality lineup starter in a PPR format that can hold down a flex spot for you pretty much every week, Jakobi Meyers is a guy I would not hesitate to draft in one of your last rounds of any scoring format. But again, PPR favors him a little bit better than others. Alrighty, there you have it. So those were my must-own wide receivers right now for 2021 fantasy football. Again, we're almost to the end of draft season now. It's just about time to get the action underway and start attacking our weekly lineups and how we're going to build our teams for the rest of the season. And that's ultimately where a lot of my fun comes from this season and last year, just getting this thing started here. So thank you all so much for watching today's video. I appreciate each and every one of you that took the time to stop by today. Remember, if you're new around here, we'd love to have you subscribe and help you win those leagues this season. I want to be a big tool, a big interactive asset for you to hopefully bring home that championship prize this season and have a great year. Join that SFS community Discord for a more personalized experience. Check out the draft guide collection if you haven't done so already and still need some help, some rankings, some must-own players, sleepers, bust candidates for this season, and all that other good stuff. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.